2024 as we serve, share, and help our city shine.
And KBLA Talk 1580 is just as excited to join the city of Compton as we broadcast live and bring our KBLA delegation with us to help clean and beautify our community, and you are invited to join us.
Come meet us on Saturday, April the 20th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in Compton as we fan out to clean up our city.
The first 50 KBLA listeners to hit our website at KBLA1580.com will receive a free KBLA tee when you join us on Saturday morning, April 20th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in Compton. Now, no show, no shirt, but sign up at KBLA1580.com right now to help us clean up Compton as part of Earth Day 2024.
We will see you on Saturday, April the 20th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in the city of Compton to do our part for Earth Day 2024.
We are KBLA Talk 1580, caring about the climate, caring about the community, cleaning up Compton.
Though you may not drive a great big Cadillac, gangsta white walls, TV antennas in the back. You may not have a car at all, but remember, brothers and sisters, you can still stand tall. Just be thankful.
I'm Tavis Smiley, and I am pleased to have you hanging out with us today on this program, and especially in this hour. It's been an amazing program so far. Two great conversations with Mark Lamont Hill in our first hour, William Darity, Duke economist, in our second hour, and I am thrilled now to be in dialogue for the hour with Brianna Joy Gray as we talk politics with the former press secretary for Bernie Sanders, now host of the Bad Faith podcast and co-host of the Hills program Rising. I love that program. It's the always outspoken and never shy to speak her truth, Brianna Joy Gray, who joins us right now. Brianna, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you, especially after that Gangster White Wall intro. It's one of my favorite songs.
Did you tell Miles to play that? He just happened to do that.
I did not. That's just some kind of serendipity that we're experiencing on this solar day.
I love
serendipity.
I love serendipity. I'm all for serendipity. For those who may not have heard our first hour today, let me just repeat what I said then, because I want to get Brianna Joy's take on this in just a second here. So I announced in our first hour today it will be in the news tomorrow. But because you're special, I'm telling you today, don't tell nobody, because it's not out until tomorrow. So the official announcement goes out to the media tomorrow. But Dr. Cornel West, who Brianna Joy Gray has interviewed a number of times, I've seen him on her program, Rising. Noted scholar, of course, independent candidate for president, will announce his vice presidential running mate exclusively on this program Wednesday, April the 10th during our first hour. So just about 48 hours from now, in the first hour of this program, Dr. West will announce on this program exclusively his running mate for this campaign, and they will both join us Wednesday. He's bringing the running mate with him. So we will spend the first hour of Wednesday's program talking to Dr. West, and whoever this running mate will be announced to the world on Wednesday. Look forward to the first hour of that program on Wednesday. So, Brianna Joy Gray, you see why I raise that, because, as I mentioned a moment ago, I've seen you on more than one occasion in conversation with my dear friend and brother Cornel West about this campaign. So let me ask you the same question I asked Mark Lamont Hill in our first hour, and that is, without knowing who his selection is, what kind of person in a campaign like this? You were there helping to run Bernie Sanders' campaign. In a moment like this, an election like this, in a campaign like this, what kind of person do you think Cornel West should be considering as his running mate?
It's interesting, right? Because most of the time when we're thinking about this within the realm of establishment politics, the question is, in what ways can the VP pick shore up certain deficiencies in the primary, in the top of the ticket candidate, right? So it's, is there a swing state that is in contention where if you get a senator or a representative from that state could potentially turn out more votes because of more name recognition in that state? Is there an issue with the candidate being underexperienced where you want somebody who knows the ropes? Is there an issue where the candidate is older and you want a younger candidate? Are people looking for a certain amount of kind of a diversity on the ticket, a gender diversity, racial diversity, et cetera? But sometimes I feel like when we're talking about outside insurgent candidates, the concerns are less about sort of identity or kind of the logistics of can I win the state or the other, largely because I think as much as I personally am rooting for Dr. West and would love to see him as president of the United States of America, there's a certain understanding that it's a long shot. So if the value of the campaign is largely about the messaging, then the core concern is whether or not the VP really sticks the landing in terms of the ideals that are being espoused by the candidate, whether they can bring more attention to the candidacy, given how the establishment media tends to have a blackout on challengers to the president. And I'd be really interested to see if a candidate can bring more kind of positive attention to the race, and also whether or not there's someone who is not going to upset the progressive base that he has built for himself by being perhaps maybe too establishment, more to his right.
Those are all interesting considerations. I want to unpack a few of those considerations with Brianna Joy Gray when we come forward. Yeah, there's a lot to talk to her about. I'm just thinking as I'm talking. All right, I'm Tavis Smiley. She's Brianna Joy Gray. More when we come forward. Stay with us.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos, and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit-on-the-go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement. Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, colors appear dull or washed out. For others, hazy or blurred vision make it hard to see details, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Brianna Joy Gray, who is the host of the Bad Faith podcast and co-host of the HEAL program, Rising, which I watch as often as I can. I love the work that she and her co-hosts do on that program, but just a huge Brianna Joy Gray fan am I, and delighted to have her back on this program. Let me dispense of this right now, Brianna Joy Gray. I teased Mark Lamont Hill in the first hour, and I said to him, well, Mark, I assume since you're a guest on my program live today, that you're not going to walk up in the studio on Wednesday and surprise me as Cornell West running mate. I assume I can take you off the list, and we had a good chuckle about that, and he played coy for a while, but eventually acknowledged that he is not the running mate with Cornell West, but he's anxious to find out who is on Wednesday on this program again in our first hour. So you see where I'm going. Let me just ask you point blank, as I'm reading a bunch of people sending me messages and posting right now about this conversation. Somebody says, Tavis, are you going to ask Brianna Joy Gray if she is Dr. West's choice? She'd actually be great. Hashtag BJG 2024. I love that. Hashtag BJG 2024. So Brianna Joy Gray, let me just ask you point blank. I'm just trying to cut down my list between now and Wednesday. Are you the running mate with Cornell West?
I don't want to spoil it, but I'm afraid I'm not. I know I should be coy like Mark and draw it out a little bit longer, but I'm not that good a showman. No, I mean, it would be an honor to be considered to run along someone who I hold in as much esteem as I do Dr. West, but no, I will not be his running mate in 2024.
Okay. Then again, maybe he hasn't made that choice yet. He just told me to hold Wednesday because he's about to make the ask. You may get a phone call from Cornell West later today, for all I know.
Let me see if I have any unread emails in my inbox real quick.
All that said, tell me why. Since we're talking about it, I'm just curious, and we'll move toward what you call the blackout of any candidate running against President Biden. I like that phrase, the blackout. So we'll get your take on this third party thing in just a moment here. But tell me why you've been in this conversation and in others, but just in this dialogue, you've been rather effusive about your praise of Cornell West. Why do you like him as a candidate in this race?
He's a principled person who's been living by his principles loudly and at great personal expense for decades and decades. I mean, this was part of what the appeal was, I think, for a lot of folks with Bernie Sanders. We live in a political climate where people pop up every 2 to 4 years saying that they understand what's wrong with America, that they feel your pain, that they are willing to agree with you on any number of points about how things need to change and how the people on the inside aren't paying enough attention to the people on the ground. And then they get into office and they completely change their tune. And the result of that has been that people are increasingly disaffected. They are less engaged with politics, understandably so, because they've seen it not really pay off for them. There was that 2014 Princeton study that showed that there is no relationship between what the people want and what legislators are willing to enact. So when you have someone like Bernie who has been inside all that time and has such a esteemed record for fighting for working class people, willing to take a lot of flack from his own caucus, to be an independent in Congress for all of that time. When you have someone like Cornell West, who has been punished professionally for standing up for the rights of Palestinians, for instance, and basically had these very elite institutions turn their backs on him and all of his scholarship, that really is a confidence builder, I think, for people. And I'll speak for myself as a confidence builder for myself, that if he were to be successful, then we would get the same Cornell West we know and love for all of these years in the White House.
No, I hear that, and I concur with that. I mean, he is, having known him for 30-some years, he is as advertised. That I can guarantee. He is as advertised, and he is consistent, no matter what one thinks of him. He's consistent in his views and his beliefs. And he's a long-distance runner. I'll put it that way. He is a long-distance runner. And I take your point. Let me pivot now to speaking of Dr. West, and he's not the only independent candidate. Robert Kennedy Jr. is out there. He's already announced his running mate. Jill Stein is out there. There are others. Donald Trump, of course, has not yet announced his running mate. We'll talk about that perhaps. But to this point you made earlier, Brianna Joy Gray, about this blackout, as you put it, this blackout of challenges to the president. I don't need to color this question much more. I'll just follow you. Unpack for me your read of this blackout of candidates to the president and the way that the Democratic Party and the Biden campaign has been acting or reacting to these independents.
Well, you hear them say it. You heard them say it explicitly during what should have been a primary season, but which obviously was not one. I believe my predecessor on the Bernie campaign from 2016, so in her show, Simone Sanders, quote, "There will be no primary." It was said very matter-of-factly. And I do understand that Biden is an incumbent. It's not completely unusual for the Democratic Party to say, we're not going to entertain other candidates. We're going to be behind the incumbent. But it's a very different question for what the news media is willing to do in this scenario. Is the news media going to listen to what is clearly a significant appetite from the American people for an alternative when you have two historically unpopular candidates in a historically unpopular rematch? I mean, when I say historically unpopular, that's not just me kind of casting aspersions. Joe Biden and Donald Trump both are historically unpopular when you look at their favorability polls. Nobody wants this rematch. And for months now, it's been clear that a majority of Democrats think that Biden is too old to run. And the crisis in Gaza has only exacerbated people's frustrations, as the overwhelming majority of Democratic voters think there should be a permanent ceasefire and disagree with the severity of the siege and how it's been enacted with the support of Joe Biden, who went and gave a bear hug to Bibi Netanyahu and all of his right-wing policies. That being said, instead of having a media which listens to the people and provides a platform for alternative candidates so they can make an informed choice as to what their options are at the ballot box, there's a complete shutdown, and the mainstream liberal media, CNN and MSNBC, are willing to give more time to someone like, say, RFK Jr., who I think expresses some overlap with what left values are, but is very, very far from them in other respects, because they perceive him to be damaging to Donald Trump. To the extent that he's perceived to be damaging to the Democratic Party, they'll shut him out too. And of course, you'll hear much more from Republicans. You'll see more Republicans on their panels, et cetera, than you'll ever see from people who represent the left flank of the Democratic Party or people outside of the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is insufficiently left.
Yep. I've asked this question of others, but not of you, certainly not of late, given all the machinations that we're experiencing and watching every day regarding this campaign. But what is your view of this notion that RFK Jr. and Cornel West and Jill Stein and others are running at the wrong time? This is not the time that Donald Trump, you know the line, represents an existential threat to our democracy. Indeed, he does. But this is the wrong time for anybody to be running a third-party campaign.
The argument that Donald Trump presents an existential threat is weakened significantly by the reality that under Biden's watch, and again, with his blessing, we have seen some estimates as high as 40,000 people killed in Gaza by our ally, Israel, while we send them $3.8 billion in aid, and while Joe Biden has gone around Congress to send additional weapons packages that aren't in large enough amounts to require congressional approval, slipping them constructively under the radar, and of course agitating for more money to be spent since, and saying that he will not condition aid on Israel complying with its humanitarian obligations. It has given it carte blanche. He has given the country carte blanche to do what they will. And so when you look at all of the genuinely horrible things that that Trump did and that he has pledged to do, and you look at the balance sheet of the harms that we've now seen Biden has willing to do, and the Trump policies he's been willing to maintain and exacerbate, including some of the worst aspects of the border policy, cutting into undermining our asylum laws for people who had legitimate asylum claims, this fight that's happening in the Supreme Court over whether or not federal jurisdiction is going to be able to may remain supreme is a different sort of issue. But the point being that a lot of the things that were argued, what people argued made Trump the worst president of all time and an existential threat, including his border policy, kids in cages, et cetera, have been continued by the Biden administration. So I'm genuinely asking, what is the ground that Biden can stand on now to say that the world would be constructively better? I think there's a really strong argument that if Donald Trump were doing some of these horrible things, that at very least there would be a protest movement that was in the mainstream against him. And right now what we're seeing is a lot of people who have been basically apologizing for Biden for months now, saying that his policy toward Gaza in particular must be good because he's a Democrat and he's a good guy. And now that we have this policy shift after the 7 aid workers with the Jose Andres food kitchen suppliers were murdered by an IDF drone a week ago, do we have this rhetorical shift that really validates what leftists have been saying for a really long time, which is that Biden had the power to do more and was choosing not to.
Let me, I was just talking in my last hour to Duke economist William Darity about why President Biden is not getting credit for these 39 months consecutive of strong economic growth. The jobs numbers are pretty good for 39 straight months. It's been growing. And I asked him as an economist why he thinks the president isn't getting credit for that. He gave his answer. The point I'm pushing toward with you is not so much that, but to underscore that there are things that Joe Biden, I believe, has done for which he's not getting credit. On the other hand, on this issue of Israel and Hamas that you're unpacking for us right about now, there is a clear, and I'm not naive in saying this or asking you about it, there is a clear distinction between his words and his deeds. This is not something that you guys spend a lot of time researching. You can just watch him every day. He is saying one thing, he's doing another. There is a clear divide. I'm not trying to demonize the president. I'm calling balls and strikes here. He's saying one thing and he's doing another. And I'm not even critiquing the policy right now. I'll allow you to do that. You're the guest. I'm just pointing out, again, he's saying one thing, he's doing something else. In real time, how do I read that disconnect? How do I read that divide, that gulf between his words and his deeds?
Yeah, it's really confusing. He did that interview, I believe, on MSNBC maybe a month or so ago, where he said in the same breath, there are red lines for Israel, and then later in the sentence, but I will not be conditioning aid. There's nothing that's going to stop me from sending aid to Israel, which, if I have a child and say, you're not going to get dessert unless you, clean your room beforehand, but also no matter what you do with your tidiness of your room, I'm going to give you dessert. It doesn't take rocket science to understand how, what is my real meaning there? What am I really willing to do to enforce my own policy? How serious should you take my words and my policy there? This has been a problem with, I would argue, Democrats, of course with Republicans, but I'm not really concerned with them. We all kind of know what the score is there. And this is part of that goes back to your question about why third parties are so important. Democrats are extremely good at presenting themselves as the better alternative. And they manage to coast on being the better alternative, even when there is such an enormous gap between what they are willing to do and what their constituents want them to do. And I feel very strongly that until voters stop rewarding Democrats for doing the bare minimum of being better than what is being described as a fascistic democracy-undermining party in the Republicans, that unless they're willing to do something better than more than just being better than the devil, as they describe them, then they should not be rewarded with our votes. And that's why it's so important to have a third party sort of a resting place, an alternative place where you can go to the ballot, show that you're engaged in the system, and cast your vote for a different set of policies. So the Democrats can say, oh, these are people who are willing to vote. These are people who are engaged in the system, but they're willing to vote for Medicare for all. They're willing to vote for an end to foreign interventionism. They're willing to vote for a higher minimum wage, right? They're willing to vote for dental being included as part of their health care coverage. Basic reforms that largely Americans agree on.
I guess my question is whether or not this dichotomy, this distinction, this difference between his words and his deeds is to be defined as, how about I put this, as deceitful and duplicitous, or is to be defined as the president doing statecraft. I mean, it could be duplicitous, it could be statecraft. You tell me.
I mean, I kind of feel feel like those are the same things to me in some ways, right? Like Biden is not. I mean, what is statecraft other than the state getting crafty about pulling the wool over your eyes? I mean, look, I'm not going to speak to what's in Joe Biden's heart. I don't know what's in that man's heart.
Right.
But I know that he knows. He's looking at these polls and seeing that his voters, overall majorities of Americans, like 80% of Democrats, want there to be a permanent ceasefire. And he knows that for reasons that has been, that exists long before his administration and this campaign, that the United States has made a commitment for military, strategic, geopolitical, democracy building, whatever you want to call it, whatever euphemisms you want to call it, reasons for maintaining this Israeli state that can be the democracy in the Middle East, quote unquote, from which we can launch our foreign affairs. And it is willing to maintain that relationship without conditions, even if it means that he might very well lose this entire election over it, to this man that they're telling us is going to end democracy as we know it. So the question is it really the voters' fault? If Biden has made that deal with the devil, if Biden has made that bargain and said, it matters more to me to maintain this relationship with Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu and the people who live there who are not citizens and not taxpayers of the United States of America, over listening to what my citizens say we should be doing with our money, billions of dollars going out of the door to Israel, so they can, according to the ICJ, do what has been described as a plausible genocide in Gaza. If he's willing to make that decision, why should we be asking voters not to take him up on his offer, not to do the completely predictable thing, which is to either stay home or vote for an alternative candidate who isn't thumbing his nose at them?
This is getting good, as we say around here. When we come forward with Brianna Joy Gray, there are other issues I want to cover with her. I want to talk about this, speaking of Joe Biden, this uncommitted movement. There are folk in primaries, to the extent we had a primary season, given what Brianna Joy Gray said earlier. There really hasn't really been a primary season. This thing has been a fait accompli since day one, it seems. But I want to talk about this uncommitted movement. I want to talk about young voters. I want to get her take on black voters and our options this time around. I got a question specifically for her about Kamala Harris being the new Willie Horton, as I see it. A great deal more to cover with Brianna Joy Gray when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The Federal Aviation Administration has another investigation on its hands after a Houston, Texas-bound Southwest Airlines flight had to return to Denver, Colorado Sunday. About a half an hour after taking off from Denver International Airport, the Boeing 737-800 made an emergency landing after an engine cover came loose and damaged part of the right wing. There were no injuries reported. Beyoncé is debuting on top of the Billboard 200 with her new country album, Cowboy Carter. The album, which was released March 29th, arrived with 407,000 equivalent units. The number is the biggest so far this year and makes the African-American superstar the first black woman to ever debut at #1 on the top country albums chart. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers lost at home to Minnesota. They played without LeBron. He was at home with the flu. The Lakers also played without Anthony Davis after the first quarter. AD suffered an eye injury. 30 points for Rui Hachimura in the loss. The Clippers overcame a 26-point deficit in the third quarter to beat Cleveland. The win was number 50 for the Clippers, their first 50-win season since 2017. Paul George scored 23 of his 39 points in the fourth quarter to spark the comeback. Congrats to South Carolina women's basketball coach Dawn Staley. South Carolina beat Iowa to win the NCAA National Championship and cap an undefeated season at 38-0. Third national title for Staley at South Carolina. Tiger Woods is planning to play in the Masters this week. Barring any physical setbacks, the 48-year-old Woods will tee off in the first round on Thursday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We're not just a thermometer recording and broadcasting popular opinion. We aim to be a thermostat, transforming the conversation about climate justice in our community. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Watch out! You got me!
The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
I feel occasional burning and stabbing in my hands as I age.
I sometimes feel numbness and tingling in my feet as I get older.
It's starting to get in the way of doing what I love.
At Nervive, we hear you, and we can help. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use.
Now that I know, I'm taking control.
Try Nervive Nerve Relief and say yes to healthy nerves.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Your floors can go from clean to dirty fast. From juice spills, whoops, to muddy paw prints, to little sticky finger marks. Good thing your Swiffer Wet Jet works fast too. Swiffer Wet Jet easily cleans everyday messes as quick as they happen. The next mess is right around the corner. So grab your Swiffer Wet Jet and just spray, push, all clean.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard Mama hates anyway?
Since 77. I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer. So I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now, you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears. Thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable with Always Fear No Gush.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Brianna Joy Gray, who is the former senior politics editor at The Intercept, former national press secretary for Bernie Sanders in 2020, and now the host of the Bad Faith podcast and co-host of a brilliant program called Rising. It is the Hills program that I tune into as often as I can to be downloaded with insights that I am willing to wrestle with because Brianna Joy Gray always makes me think when I engage her, and I'm glad to have her on this program. Let me talk about these uncommitteds. We saw what happened in Michigan and beyond. But I'm wondering, as a strategy, as a political strategy, what you make of this uncommitted movement.
I think it is one of the smartest and most successful movements of this nature I've seen in a really long time. The argument against doing things like this, about having quote-unquote protest votes in the past, has been that if you do this is what they tell the left. If you do this, you're going to get blamed for Trump or whatever the Republican nominee is, their ultimate victory. And it won't actually advance your goals and interests. It'll just cause you to be reviled among Democrats, sort of what we might call the Bernie bro phenomenon, even though back in 2016, more Bernie Sanders for primary voters fell in line and voted for Hillary Clinton than Hillary Clinton primary voters fell in line and voted for Barack Obama back in 2008. But that's a different story. So that's the argument, right? Don't do it because you're going to be the villain in it when they tell the story back in history. But what they're doing with uncommitted is, one, by placing it during the primary process, they're really exposing the extent to which the primaries are for exactly this sort of thing. There is no general election risk happening here. It's an opportunity for voters to make it known that there are conditions to their vote that the ultimate nominee can choose to acquiesce to listen to the voters, and to redeem themselves before the general election time comes around. And if they don't, we know exactly what votes Biden could have gotten in the general had he been a different kind of candidate. And the blame is more rightly, I think, put on him as to why he didn't listen to the public on an overwhelmingly popular agenda item, in this case, ending the siege on Gaza, when he could have done that to defeat Trump. So specifically, if you want to talk numbers, I'm happy to get into that as well, because their success is not just limited, of course, to Michigan.
Make the case with the numbers. Go ahead.
So most recently, I think most significantly, is the state of Wisconsin, where they got about 40 uncommitted, it was called something different there, but they got about 47,000 votes. Now remember that Joe Biden narrowly beat Donald Trump in Wisconsin in 2020 by about half as many votes. And similarly, back in 2016, Hillary Clinton lost Wisconsin to Donald Trump by, again, about half as many people as voted uncommitted just last week or whatever it was. That means that twice as many voters as has determined the outcome of the state in the last two election cycles is saying that they're withholding their votes for the primary candidate, for Joe Biden, in order to register discontent with how he's handling this crisis. And so the real question is Biden going to listen? And if he doesn't, are the Democrats going to be able to turn around and effectively blame those voters on his loss when Joe Biden had this opportunity months in advance to simply correct course?
I'm glad you made that last point. You've made it a couple of times now, and I want to come to that because on my home station, this program is syndicated across the country and heard in markets from California to the Carolinas. But here in L.A., where I'm based, my home station, I did an editorial that we ran a few weeks ago. Ran it for a while, and the commentary was essentially asking the question, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? And I played an old school song from the Blind Boys of Alabama. And the lyrics are, if I die today and my soul be lost, ain't nobody's fault but mine. And so I played this Blind Boy song, and I asked in the commentary, in the editorial, if Joe Biden loses this election, whose fault is it? And I laid out all of these things that you just laid out, that we're reading, that we're watching. I delved into the data points, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The polls, the surveys, the studies. And I asked the question, if Joe Biden loses this race, whose fault is it? I think I hear already in your prior response what you think the answer to that question is. But I want to probe a little bit more to get a sense on the front side of this. And certainly I pray that Donald Trump is not the next president of the United States. But the day after, when the media starts doing its postmortem, who are they going to blame for this loss? Will they blame Joe Biden? And if not, who else? Who are they going to blame?
Well, certainly they're going to blame progressives. I mean, how many how many cycles do we have to go through before we know that that's the case? You still hear kind of Carville types melting down about the idea that Bernie bros did it. Sometimes you'll get some relief as a Bernie bro and they'll start to blame Russia. But at no point is there ever an accounting of whether Hillary Clinton could have treated some of the criticisms she was getting in 2016 more seriously from people who were criminal justice reform advocates who were frustrated by her position, or her statements around super predators, or her husband's policies with respect to the war on crime or defunding welfare or any of those kinds of things. Every criticism of her at the time was characterized as rooted in sexism or some kind of personal animus, which was certainly true of some people, but wasn't true of, I think, a lot of people in the Democratic Party base. Cut forward to 2020, I think Biden was largely saved by the fact that we were in the middle of a pandemic and people distrusted Donald Trump's ability to shepherd us out of it. But that is, like it or not, and sort of in the rear view mirror of people's minds. And they're asking themselves the question as to whether or not the Democratic Party has reckoned with its prior failures. Joe Biden seems to be, or the Democratic Party seems to be again saying, none of these substantive criticisms are real. They're just mad about his age. They're not giving him enough credit for the economy. These are people who can't be satisfied, so they shouldn't be listened to. But they are ignoring some big-ticket items, and I think namely Gaza is having a really huge effect in this election that I think the Biden administration didn't anticipate. They thought it was going to die out and be over, and that by election season, people weren't going to be paying attention anymore. But the death tolls could frankly be twice as high as they are now because of widespread disease and famine by the time we get to Election Day. And I don't know that Joe Biden wants to be looking down the barrel of having blood on his hands for 50, 60,000 people dead in Gaza when he has so late in the game switched course on the willingness to put any pressure on Netanyahu at all. So the question was, who's going to be blamed? They're going to blame the left, but the question is whether or not the media framing will be successful when so many people, 83% of Democrats want there to be an immediate ceasefire, when everybody knows that this is not some fringe position. Just like Medicare for all is not some fringe position. 80+% of Democrats support that as well. Can the media rightly convince us that we aren't in the majority and that it's the legislators who are wrong, as they've done in the past? I mean, that remains to be seen.
Yeah. When we come forward, let's talk about young voters. Now that we talked about the uncommitted, let's talk about these young voters. Let's talk about black voters as she sees them in terms of their options this time around, and all the articles written about the fact that the president's black numbers are soft and not getting stronger as quickly as they need to for him to pull this off in November. And then let's talk about Kamala Harris. We'll do all that with Brianna Joy Gray when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
It's the celebration of a living legend. It's the Farewell Tour. It's Maze featuring Frankie Bello.
Thank you for the love to the
Also featuring the soul icon, Anthony Hamilton. Plus, After 7. It's a Mother's Day celebration, May 12th in the Kia Forum. In commemoration, come in your all white. Get tickets at Ticketmaster. Presented by the Black Promoters Collective.
1 in 3 children born today will get diabetes. This sad prediction by the Centers for Disease Control will come true if millions of Americans don't improve their lifestyles, especially by changing what they eat, how much they eat, and how active they are every day. Every 23 seconds, another American gets diabetes. Stop diabetes before it starts. To learn more, contact the American Diabetes Association or download our free diabetes education programs at learningaboutdiabetes.org.
The Supplemental Security Income Program provides monthly payments to help meet basic needs, like putting food on the table, paying the rent, or buying new shoes for growing feet. You may qualify if your income and financial resources are low and you are 65 or older, or an adult or child with a disability or who is blind. Call 1-800-772-1213 or go to ssa.gov/SSI to start to apply. Produced by Social Security at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Did you know one of the best investments you can make? It's in yourself. At My Computer Career, in just a few months, you can start your new career in the high-demand, recession-resistant field of information technology. Isn't it time you invest in you and start a career in networking, cybersecurity, AI, or upskill to boost your current IT career? So get the ROI you deserve at My Computer Career. No experience necessary. Start now at mycomputercareer.edu.
Financial aid is available for qualified students, including the GI Bill.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Brianna Joy Gray. If you have not heard this commercial, take a listen.
I guess I should clear my mind here a little bit.
We can all see Joe Biden's weakness. If Biden wins, can he even survive till 2029? The real question is, can we? Make America Great Again Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That laughter that you hear in that ad is the voice, the laughter of one Kamala Harris. We've all seen her do this sort of laugh thing when she's in interviews and ask her a question, and she sort of goes into this sort of laugh thing to buy herself some time to respond. And so they've made effective use of that in this ad. My question in playing this ad, Brianna Joy Gray, is to simply ask whether or not, to your mind, because certainly it is the case in my mind, whatever one thinks of Kamala Harris, that she's the new Willie Horton. They're going to use these kinds of ads. You're going to see more of this vice president than any vice president I predict in any political campaign for the White House ever. There are going to be all kinds of ads with Kamala Harris in them, and the point of these ads is to Willie Horton-eyes her, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, so basically to capitalize off of people's, I guess, distaste for her, whether it's rooted in something, let's say, legitimate, again, one of these criminal justice critiques, or whether it's rooted in something illegitimate like racism.
Well, not even just distaste, but fear that if he doesn't survive, if he dies in this second term, that she becomes the president.
I guess my hesitation of calling it fear is that, I mean, the Willie Horton ads, the idea was there was someone that you were a threatening, kind of a violent image of a black man whose skin they made darker, famously right on the magazine cover. Like, that was the idea, to really stoke kind of fear of bodily harm almost in the public if Democrats were ascendant. And in this case, it doesn't feel so much like there's a fear of Kamala Harris or what policy she might enact. I'm not even sure what those might necessarily be perceived to be, because for whatever reason, she hasn't been granted or hasn't claimed a substantial identity for herself separate and apart from Joe Biden's. There was the effort to try to make her the czar of the border crisis, but as that has turned south, I don't think either Kamala Harris or the Biden, like, no one has any interest in having ownership over that particular issue. But I take your point that, to this extent, she in some crowds is even less popular than Joe Biden, or at least in some ways easier to parody, that they're going to exploit that. And I think that's right. I think that you should expect that. My hesitation is only that Biden has so much of his own baggage, with polls showing how many of his own voters in the Democratic base have concerns about his health and age and longevity. And even in the core of the ad that you played, most of the critique is about Biden and his age and his physical fitness, as opposed to Kamala's laugh that comes in here at the end, that it really is hard to disentangle how much of this is really about kind of Kamala Harris being Willie Horton, as it were, and how much there's just a lot of dirt on these Democratic candidates that they are susceptible to, right? And that stuff, even if it's small potatoes, like obviously the VP having an awkward laugh, being kind of goofy, whatever. I'm goofy. There's a lot of goofy people. It's not a crime to be goofy. But it starts to add up when there's nothing on the plus side or very little on the plus side of the balance sheet, right? So if you're an incumbent and people perceive you to be responsible for their decline in quality of life while you were president, if people find themselves still struggling to pay for their kids' education, Biden ended the student debt moratorium that started during the pandemic under Donald Trump, adding hundreds or thousands of dollars to people's monthly bills. If there are economic trends that just aren't really about Biden, I'm not even saying it's entirely his fault, but quality of life has been harder and harder for my generation, millennials, and people coming up after me, then he has to put something positive on the balance sheet, or else, people are going to talk about Kamala Harris being goofy and him being old.
Nope, I take your point. Our remaining moments with Brianna Joy Gray. Slow down, Tavis. When we come forward.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Brianna Joy Gray. Brianna, got just 3 minutes left here. Let me ask you how you're tracking the young vote this time out, and what say you about all these articles that I read every other day about the black vote this time around?
Neither is looking good. What was the stat? The Hill reported a couple of weeks ago that fewer than 40% of young black voters say they will vote at all this year. This was, I think, the first poll that showed that Trump was ahead of Biden with the youngest voting tranche, which is pretty remarkable. And black voters are also in the balance in a way that they haven't been historically. I mean, it's been inching in this direction, but Trump has demonstrated repeatedly that he has the ability to have greater inroads into black and Latino voters than any Republican in generations. And I think the Democratic Party needs to think long and hard about why that reason is. With respect to young voters and black voters, I think the issue of Gaza, again, is really central. Polls I've been alluding to show that Democratic voters in general are very much pro-permanent ceasefire, but those numbers spike to almost 100% when you start to talk up to young voters and to black voters who feel a lot of solidarity, generally speaking, with Palestinians. I mean, I don't know what to make of. I mean, we know what to make of it, right? The question is what Joe Biden is willing to do about it. And he just came out with some new student debt policy today, possibly trying to shore up support among young voters in particular. But again, that policy geared toward 4 million voters. It's not nothing. Yeah. I think that matters for those 4 million people. That's a far cry from the 44 million student debtors whom he promised at least $10,000 of student debt cancellation.
In the 90 seconds I have left here, I'll give it all to you. What have you learned or how have you navigated this terrain, this tricky terrain that you find yourself trying to work your way through, expressing and espousing a different viewpoint that at times gets you reviled by Democrats?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. When the Bernie campaign ended, I had, mainstream journalists, people at MSNBC tweeting, "She'll never work in this town again." And I think that's right. You don't work for an insurgent candidate. You don't ally yourself with people like Cornel West or Bernie Sanders or Jill Stein and get a job in Washington. You don't get your own show on MSNBC like so many press secretaries of yore have gotten. But I didn't enter this business for personal financial gain or personal career advancement. I joined the Bernie crew in 2016 as a Twitter warrior because I really believed in what he stood for. And even if Bernie himself doesn't speak to some of those projects in the way that I still wish he would, I still believe in them. It's a core value issue. So it is what it is. We have to fight harder than establishment folks have to fight for what they believe in. But we've got numbers and we've got people with us, and so I feel gratified in that.
Her name is Brianna Joy Gray. She's the host of the Bad Faith podcast, co-host of At Rising the Hill, former national press secretary, as she mentioned, for Bernie Sanders in 2020, former senior politics editor at The Intercept, and I always enjoy talking to her. I had an old man tell me years ago, Brianna Joy Gray, "Tavis, you my horse. If you don't never win a race, you my horse." And so I'm not saying that to you. I'm just saying I'm with you come hell or high water. Brianna Joy Gray, good to have you on. All the best to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our 3 hours are gone just like that. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until then, thanks for tuning in to Tavis Smiley. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The Federal Aviation Administration has another investigation on its hands after a Houston, Texas-bound Southwest Airlines flight had to return to Denver, Colorado Sunday. About a half an hour after taking off from Denver International Airport, the Boeing 737-800 made an emergency landing after an engine cover came loose and damaged part of the right wing. There were no injuries reported. Beyoncé is debuting on top of a building